Holmes, in trying to understand reality, the Big Bang, the beginning of the universe, is something everybody focuses on. You talk about 3 Big Bangs. Why?
That's right, 3 Big Bangs. As you say, everybody's heard of the first. I think the second Big Bang is life on Earth. And I can see it as an explosion of life over centuries, but still an exponential increase of life. Third Big Bang, that's going to surprise you a bit, perhaps. Where is it? You're looking at it. It's in my head, right? In your head. It's the human mind. Well, let's think about the 3. First Big Bang, 13.7 billion years ago, maybe. An explosion, an inflation shortly after the initial explosion, but then an expanding universe ever since. And you may say, well, it's a huge universe. Do we need one that big? It turns out we do if we're going to have any heavy elements, heavier than hydrogen, for example. They're made in the stars, and that takes a lot of cooking time. So it turns out that if the universe was no bigger than a galaxy, it seems big enough, doesn't it? But you wouldn't have the cooking time to make heavy elements. That means oxygen, that means iron, that means nitrogen, that means the atoms in our bodies. We are, if you like, fossil stardust, or if you're in a more gloomy mood, we are nuclear waste, shall we say. It also turns out that if the 4 fundamental forces of nature weren't about what they are, we wouldn't be here. You know, those 2 of those forces, gravity, electromagnetism, they make up the possibility of chemistry and, of course, keeping the world together as gravity does. 2 other forces you may not know, they are a nuclear scale, but the weak and strong nuclear force, if they weren't about what they are, we wouldn't be here. In that sense, I do think that the first Big Bang, the huge universe we're in a way looks like a setup. The startup looks like a setup, you might say, for what could come later. In a way, it's what we philosophers say, necessary but maybe not sufficient for the second Big Bang. Now, the second Big Bang is life on Earth. We hope there's life elsewhere. We don't know that. There probably is life elsewhere, but life on Earth is still going to be pretty special, pretty radically different. It's hard to know how it got started, but it did get started. The radical difference about life on Earth that makes it explosive is genetic coding, the appearance of a DNA molecule in which information can be stored. And what that means is you can have radical innovation. You can store, elaborate information. And so we've had some, we don't know, somewhere in the range maybe of 5 billion species of life come and gone on Earth. We don't know how many we still have. Something in the range maybe of 30 million species of life on Earth. It's a way in which evolution goes pretty slow, you might say, and there's some reasons for that, but there's a way in which it seems to me that there's been an explosion on life. The genetics is in a way radically different from anything else in space because of this possibility of storing information and elaborating information.
Now the third Big Bang?
The third Big Bang, as I said, is in the human mind. Now you may say, well, animals have minds, and they do. Animals have fairly impressive mental capacities at times. But the thing about humans that's radically different is we can pass ideas from mind to mind. I hope that's happening right now when I'm talking to you. But see, we don't think your dog or a chimpanzee can have conversations like this, passing ideas from mind to mind. The human mind is the most complex thing in the known universe. In a way, astronomy deals with the very big, microphysics deals with the very small, but the most complexity is middle range on Earth. The most complexity is in our minds. Humans have the capacity for what I call cumulative transmissible cultures, passing ideas from mind to mind over many generations. And that, I think, makes humans radically different. Maybe I can make my point by putting on my thinking cap, as I will do now, right? This is something.
Mind the gap.
Mind the gap. There's something about the human mind that's crossed a radically different threshold from any other creature on Earth. And that's my third Big Bang.
Well, let's look at these, because normally you see the first Big Bang literally as an instant, and everybody agrees on that. But the second and third, most people think those are just gradients, that there's a gradient between non-life and life, and it's very and between minds and animal minds at the beginning, and so there isn't really a bang in the latter two. But do you see an instant where the human mind became different?
I don't see an instant, but I see crossing a radical threshold. Stay away from the idea of it being instantaneous. But it does cross what we might call a singularity. That is to say, when you get the possibility for information transfer, you've got a radically different sort of process at work, which wasn't previously at work.
Now,
and likewise, when we get the capacity to transmit ideas from my mind to your mind, that's a radically different capacity, which has little or no precedent in the animal world.
Do you see the three Big Bangs with any larger implication, a transcendent implication, because there are these three Big Bangs?
Well, I do. I think now we need a concept of nature which is adequate to explain these three Big Bangs, not just matter-energy, but matter-energy that gains the capacity to take on information, to elaborate and enrich information, and in such way that humans appear who have the capacity to think, to have a worldview, to think about meaning and significance in life. And if you like, I could see there's a kind of, what shall we say, use a theological word, a logos, perhaps, that the universe at least can generate mind, and so we need a cosmology that's adequate to these explosive Big Bangs, okay? So the first is universal, it's all over the universe. The second is rare, life is rare, life on Earth is rare at least, even if we find life elsewhere. But the third Big Bang is singular, right? You're it, I'm it, we are it. And we need a cosmology adequate for that.